Post-Structuralism, Foucault and Critical Criminology. Michel Foucault differs from classical Marxist thinkers. Marx specifically linked power strictly to economic structures and state repression. But Foucault broadens the scope. I often think Foucault has learned from Max Weber. For Foucault, power is not just imposed on individuals, but really circulates through language, discourse, social relations, etc. This network, or rather this networked nature of power, requires us to rethink traditional views of dominance and control. In other words, it stretches beyond just the simple entity of state or economics. It is way more fluid. So, to understand Foucault, really, there are three phases of his thoughts that we need to discuss. The first is archaeological. Archaeology uncovers categories and the origins. The second would be genealogical. Genealogy for Foucault basically analyzes the evolution of disciplinary practices, especially focusing on normalization and surveillance. And third, the ethical phase. Ethics in this case explores individual self-discipline and freedom within existing power systems. For example, prison timetables and how these disciplinary methods become pervasive, ubiquitous across diverse institutions. Discourse for Foucault is not neutral, but it operates as a channel of power. Courts, for example, legal institutions, media, all of these shape our understanding of crime and criminals, often amplifying stereotypes. You can think about how public perceptions of criminals influence policies and social attitudes, and lawmaking, for example. This demonstrates how power operates through language and knowledge production. Think of how modern control techniques operate subtly through institutions enforcing conformity. The concept of the carceral demonstrates how disciplinary power is diffused through social life. Think of institutional surveillance and normalization. This is an example of how power is relational and multifaceted, not centralized only in the state apparatus. Today, it is ubiquitous and omnipresent without being questioned. So, Foucault argues that self-discipline in this ethical phase, that self-discipline isn't purely autonomous, but rather it is influenced by social norms and discourse. Governmentality helps understand the subtle ways power operates through both societal institutions and individuals' self-regulation. The behavior of the law-abiding citizen, for example, and societal expectations of the law-abiding citizen illustrates these points. Foucault argued that power is not held by individuals or institutions, but rather it is a complex web of relationships and interactions that shape society. He saw power as decentralized, not localized in a single entity or person. He saw it as diffuse, operating through various mechanisms, institutions, and social structures, productive, creating and shaping individuals' identities, behaviors, and knowledge. Others, for example, like Hunt, bridges the Marxist tradition with Foucauldian insights by framing law as a form of governance rather than mere oppression. This synthesis provides critical tools to study contemporary power relations in law and society comprehensively, including helping us better understand critical criminology. David Garland's work highlights significant shifts in crime control strategies, particularly in the United States and, of course, in the United Kingdom. For example, the changing role of the state, Garland argues that the state's role in crime control has evolved with a greater emphasis on responsibilization, where individuals and communities are expected to take responsibility for their own security and crime prevention. Also, for example, his concept of new criminologies of everyday life. Here, Garland identifies a new approach to crime control that focuses on managing risk and preventing crime through situational measures rather than addressing underlying causes. Garland emphasizes the importance of understanding the cultural, the historical, the political context in shaping crime policies and practices. All of these influenced by neoliberalism and, of course, with its cultural shifts. So then, in summary, power as seen by these thinkers are dispersed and multi-layered. Knowledge, discourse, and technologies of control these days shape both institutions and individual behavior, continuing to influence criminological theory and practice.